Welcome to the Global Good Podcast, where each week we'll travel around the globe meeting the most incredible people doing the work that's truly making the world a better place. From the peaks of the Himalayas to leagues under the sea, join us as we embark on adventure for good. "40 million Americans, or about 1 in 7, have suffered from substance or alcohol addiction in their lifetime. Drug overdose deaths in the U.S. have more than tripled since 1990, with more than 240 people dying every day from drug overdose in the U.S. While the world battles a pandemic, a silent epidemic is running underneath, and American youth are at the epicenter of the growing problem. This week, we're headed to Chicago, Illinois, in the center of the United States, where one man turned his experiences with addiction into a passion for running and uniting people that are battling substance abuse. In March of 2020, Greg Nance celebrated 3,000 days sober. To commemorate the milestone, he decided to run 3,000 miles. That's the distance between New York and Seattle. He's literally going to run the country while exploring America's addiction epidemic. It's National Drug Recovery Month, so I couldn't think of a better person to talk to this week about his run, the documentary being made about his run, and encourage others to join the race, because the road to recovery for America is a marathon, not a sprint. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Nicole. Good to see you.
You too. How are you?
Awesome. Great day over here.
Good. You've had a very busy week, and I know we'll talk about it, but thank you for making time.
100% thank you for making time.
Well, I'm excited. You and I have both gone to school in Chicago, so I am thrilled to have my own little homecoming in this conversation. And I love the idea of starting in Chicago for a number of reasons. Chicago is this, just cross-section of America. It is urban, rural, rich, poor. It is just this beautiful grouping of the, everything in America at once. So for today, what I would love to do is actually have you immerse us in your Chicago and, help us understand the beginning of your journey. And we're going to talk about a much bigger journey, but just start by giving us sort of a grounding of why we're having today's conversation.
Absolutely. So number one, I'm honored to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share. I want to take you back in time to the year 2007. I'm an 18 going on 19-year-old college freshman in the great city of Chicago. I am in Hyde Park, which is a wonderful neighborhood on the south side of the city, adjacent to the lake and adjacent to a number of really beautiful neighborhoods that have been around for more than 100 years. It's a really beautiful place. There's a beautiful university there where I happen to be a student, and I'm extremely excited because I've been working for years and years and years for this opportunity, and I'm so blessed and grateful to be there. It's beautiful. There's all of these ivy decked, the ivy decked campus, these old Gothic style buildings, really smart people, including like Nobel laureates have been here. Soon to be President Obama is a law instructor here. It's really kind of an exciting place that I've been working my whole life to be. And my little corner of this is actually what turns into this kind of brick home, and it's actually a fraternity house. And this fraternity house is going to be kind of the center of my little social sector for the first couple of years of college, which isn't too dissimilar to many college freshmen. But in my case, this is a place where my alcohol and drug use, which I've already been dabbling in and then increasingly accelerating going into college, will actually rise and rise and rise. And so amidst this wonderful opportunity, I'm privately struggling. And I'm struggling in plain sight because, like a lot of 19-year-olds, I'm drinking a lot of beer. I'm drinking a lot of alcohol, which is pretty typical on a college campus. And yet underneath that, I'm actually going through some difficult stuff around anxiety, around depression, and it's sort of a silent battle that I'm not able to give words to, I'm not able to vocalize, and I'm not able to get any kind of help or real support because of that. And so that is my Chicago in 2007, and really the beginning of my journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And you said your silent battle, which made me think immediately, like part of the conversation we're going to have today is what you and I have both referred to as a silent epidemic. And so I just want to underscore the importance of that. Okay, so you've laid it out for us. We're in beautiful Hyde Park. I too got the opportunity to live there and be there. But this brings us to your inflection point. And maybe it wasn't an exact moment, maybe it was a series of, I have absolutely no idea. So I'm really interested to hear from you. And, for our audience, something I've heard you say is that you are radically honest. And so am I. So I'm open to discussing all the things that you want to discuss. But would you mind sharing with us sort of what it was in your life or what happened that made you realize there's a problem,
Mm.
and also maybe how that mirrors what so many other Americans, I mean at least 40 million, are going through?
Absolutely, and I will footnote the radical honesty piece is new for me. As of 2 years ago, I was actually in denial about my own mental health challenges and my own challenges with drugs and alcohol. And part of my journey is now to speak about this openly and honestly, because there are so many of us dealing with it, and only when we bring it out into the open can we actually be there for each other. And so that is a new thing, and I'm glad to be on Team Radical Honesty now, although it took a long time for me to join. Um, Rewinding to that inflection point that you referenced. So I'm, by all accounts, a pretty successful college student. I'm getting good grades. I get elected to student government. I'm a varsity athlete at the university. I join a couple of like the cool clubs that you're supposed to join. I'm in my fraternity. I'm doing really, really well by all accounts. But underneath, I'm not. I feel a ton of stress, a ton of pressure. I'm homesick. I had a really lovely girlfriend in high school. We've broken things off because of the distance. And I need a rudder. I need a North Star. I need something that I can go for that's not drug or alcohol related. And yet that's how I'm masking these feelings I have. For me, my inflection point comes in the fall of 2008, October 2008. I began working on MoneyThink, an organization that sends college mentors into high school classrooms. And this was my inflection point because for the first time, I really began connecting with the greater Chicago community and getting out on the South Side, taking buses to go mentor students, doing a 3-mile run further south to go connect with students that had very different upbringings. They're in the city. They are in kind of overcrowded schools where violence is a real issue. Many of these students have lost cousins or even brothers and sisters to gang violence. And it's a totally different kind of world than what I grew up on beautiful, idyllic Bainbridge Island. And it was a huge wake-up call for me that, look, I've been so freaking lucky in my life. I have so many blessings, so privileged and none of that's because of me. It's just my parents gave birth to me in this place, nice family, nice community. A lot of these students I'm working with now didn't have any of that. And yet they are still so hardworking. They're still so driven. They have all these big goals and dreams. And hey, maybe I can help be a tailwind for them so that they can reach more of those dreams. And it was so gratifying and exciting and just awesome. And I very quickly realized that, look, I might be teaching them something about like how to save up for college or like apply to college, but they're teaching me far, far more about myself, about our country, about challenges we face, and about how much we actually have in common that doesn't meet the eye initially. And that was my inflection point because this was the beginning of what I call the path to purpose, where so much of my drinking and drugging was to kind of mask how I was feeling. So I was just sort of overwhelmed. This was an outlet where it was healthy. And bluntly, I was still abusing drugs. I was still drinking too much. I was still suffering from addiction. But I at least saw kind of a glimmer of what life can be without that, where it's like, look, this is so wonderfully enriching to do this work. That was the beginning of my inflection point, particularly around a couple of students I worked with. They were open about some of their own mental health challenges, where one lost a cousin in a shooting, in a gang shooting, and was just crushed. And it's like, oh man, I lost my cousin in a car accident, 10 years ago, and we're able to connect on that level. Loss, tragedy is inherent to the human experience. We all experience loss and grief, and all of a sudden we're connecting in a deep way. And this student who's 16 years old, he is so much more in touch with his actual emotions. He's so much more in touch with his mental health than I was in that moment. And it's like, whoa, look, this guy is totally teaching me right now. And so that's the beginning of the path to purpose. That's my inflection point there.
That's awesome. And I think you've definitely touched on part of my purpose in even starting this podcast, which is we're not different as much as and in previous episodes I've even said, like, as much as we like to think we're different from one another or our ancestors, we're not. We react and behave just like we did 200 years ago, and we may know a little bit more about, the specifics of how things work in our brains or bodies, but otherwise, fear is fear, frustration, anxiousness, like, we react in the same way. So I love that you said that. So as you talk about this masking,
Yep.
I can't help think about, like, the things you're describing are the earlier 2000s, and I hate bringing things back to the pandemic, but we are, as we record this, we're still currently in a pandemic. Things are only getting worse, right?
Mhm.
Especially for young people. You mentioned, like, school and these experiences, and there's so many people who were already struggling. I mean, this epidemic we're talking about of addiction, it happened before the pandemic. It's happened around the pandemic. It's happened underneath the pandemic. And we also only see data, even in a good year, we only see data, that's lagged. So in 2020, for example, we were looking at 2018 and 19 numbers. And that's across, all kinds of research and statistics. But all of a sudden we have this thing. And we're looking at numbers from, say, 2018. They don't reflect what's really going on in the public conscience and in families, in communities. So I'm just really curious from you, particularly as we start to talk more about, youth, mental health.
Yeah.
Do you have any, like, how do we quantify these things? I mean, anecdotally, anyone who knows a psychologist or psychiatrist has heard enough of, like, things are worse. But
Yeah.
how do we start to really wrap our head around these numbers?
Yeah. So number one, $1 billion question that is so vital. I wish I had any kind of compelling answer. I don't. I think it's enormously difficult in the best of times, when there's a pandemic, when there's confidentiality, when there's privacy regulations and all this, complications on complications on complications. And I think from a policymaker standpoint, oh my goodness, this makes it even harder because we're partially flying blind, bluntly. It's like, what is the scale of this? That said, I love what you mentioned where, talk to any psychologist, psychiatrist, you'll start getting, an anecdotal picture. This is one of those cases where I think it's okay to pull the fire alarm, because we know from those conversations with psychologists, psychiatrists, this is massive. It's probably bigger than we can even estimate, where students, they've been ripped out of their social structure. They've been ripped out of their learning environment. They're falling behind on their goals. Sports seasons canceled, arts and crafts canceled, classes canceled. All these milestones you've been looking forward to pulled away from you. And then we've lost how many hundreds of thousands of Americans? So every one of those, you've got a grandparent, you've got an uncle, you've got a parent, a sibling that's either dealing with long COVID or has passed away. That is traumatic. That is what led me on my own first drinking benders that led to addiction, was losing my granddad to a stroke. That is now someone losing a granddad or grandmother to COVID. And all that said, I think it's a moment where we can pull the fire alarm and kind of put all hands on deck to address this, really at every level, from the federal government on down to school districts and classrooms, church groups, NGOs. It takes a village to support young people in the best of times. We are not in the best of times. This is a true global crisis, and we got to be there.
As you said that, I was thinking and so you and I were at U Chicago at the same time. We didn't know each other back then, but we were there around the same time.
I totally spaced on that.
Yeah. But to the point is, essentially, there's someone I went to school with, and I don't stay in touch with a ton of people from all of my, educational experiences, but I belong to listservs and things like that. And even yesterday, someone that graduated with us shared his mother's obituary. And
Mm,
it was just this moment, to your point, of like, there's already so much going on. And this thing was created for all of us who work in the spaces we do, and sort of what can we do to be giving back. And even amongst our peers, it's like the loss, it's
mm,
happening so frequently these days that it's just created this space where, like you said, on the best of days, we aren't doing enough. And these are
mm.
not the best of days. And we're adults who, in theory, should know how to handle
Theoretically.
our strain theory, right? We should know how to handle our emotions and struggles and the
Mm,
stages of grieving. And it sucks and it's hard. On the
yeah.
best day, it is hard. Uh, so, okay, going with that, you have decided to be solution oriented, and that involves a couple of things. And one is running, and another is a documentary.
I,
Yeah, so I would love if you could take a little time and really talk about or explain to us how you intend to use this passion you have with running
mm.
and how that ties to a documentary. Like what is it that you're trying to do with this limited but fire alarm level knowledge we have?
I love that question, and I'll start by sharing kind of how I got here with kind of a second inflection point. In February 2019, I became the youngest guy to run 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And at the final finish line in Miami, after running 7 marathons now, my running sponsor, who's helped me to pay for all this, is there to celebrate this achievement by spraying me with a bottle of champagne. It's a celebratory mood. I'm soaked in champagne. I head back to this nice hotel they're putting me up in. And for the first time in over 7 years, I try to score painkillers, opiates, Percocet and Vicodin that I used to abuse when I was a teenager. And the next morning, waking up thinking, this is a nightmare. What in the heck just happened? And as I've slowly kind of pieced it together, being sprayed with champagne when you're an alcoholic is super triggering. So how did all of that happen? Well, it's because I didn't have the courage to share with my running sponsor, hey, actually, like, I don't drink, and I don't drink because I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink because I'm trying to build a better future for myself that doesn't involve poisoning myself the way I used to with this stuff. And I didn't have that conversation because I feared judgment, I feared stigma, I feared this partnership that we were building, and so I didn't have that conversation. The result is I put myself in a place of great vulnerability and nearly relapse. If the fellow I'd called had had pills, I would have taken them. Luckily, he didn't, so I didn't. In the aftermath of that is when I started taking the first steps for that radical honesty piece we spoke on, where before this, I was in denial. I was not an alcoholic. I was not an addict. That's other people. That's someone else. I don't have mental illness. I don't, what? That's somebody else. Only in the aftermath of this do I start really doing the self-work that I should have been doing as a teenager. Late to the party, but better late than never. And in the course of that, a big piece of advice that my therapist, my mindset coach, as I call him, he hits on is, share your journey as you do it. And so it starts one-to-one with, a close friend. And in every conversation, every single conversation, my friend either personally is dealing with mental illness or is personally dealing with addiction or has a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a partner who has. And so it's literally 1 degree of connection every single conversation. And the crazy part about this is that I've known these people for years and years and years, and yet we've never talked about any of that. What is going on with that? And it's part of American culture and American society. The fear of judgment and stigma is real, and it prevents us from being open and honest with each other. And I realized that, look, I need to do something about this because it literally almost killed me in February 2019. How many others are there out there? And as I look into it, you mentioned the 40 million Americans. It's mind-boggling that it can affect so many people, and yet we're still not talking about it. And so, to your actual question, I'm long-winded this morning. Got to drink more of this coffee. I'm a runner, and I love challenging myself. It's part of what I love about running. I've long dreamed of running from New York City to Seattle, running across the country, and I've now realized that there's a real purpose behind this, because we can use this run to really spark a dialogue about youth mental health and about addiction recovery. By as we're going through, we connect with folks on the road that want to join up, want to run a mile or two, want to come have lunch on our RV, share part of their story of mental illness, navigating to build better mental health, navigating their own addiction challenges, their family's addiction challenges, and finding those steps in recovery. And our aim is to stitch together these stories to show the universality of these experiences. Because yes, we looked at, we may talk different. Someone in New York has a cool accent, I don't. We meet, they may have a different skin color, they have a different occupation, different education level, different faith. That's okay, because actually when you boil it down, not only are we both Americans, we both have a lot of similar challenges, and a lot of how we're going to get through it needs to look similarly. And really the antidote to addiction, which is an isolating condition, is connection. It's being around the people that you love, that care about you, that are there to support you in whatever form or fashion. It can be your blood relatives, it can be your partner, it can be a wonderful church group, it can be your classmates. It needs to be people that care about you, that show compassion, empathy. That is a big part of the solution. That's what our documentary, which is called 1 in 7, which is the proportion of Americans dealing with substance addiction. 40 million Americans, that's 1 in 7. We aim to model this, through these conversations, through stitching together these stories, how we can better be there for those in need, to better support them.
I love this. And obviously, it sounds like the through lines here are running. And as you talk about, part of this is in the past running from problems. And
yes,
running has been so healing. So I love this through line of using running literally across the country, Chicago right in the center, right, to tell these stories. But then also it's amplifying voices, and not just voices that we're used to hearing. Or, again, this gets back to even the introduction of saying, this cross section of America. It touches every family. That number 1 in 7. And speaking of 7, I'm sorry, because you said the number 7 so many times, but it was 7 continents. Is that what you said?
That's right.
In 7 marathons. Okay, 7 marathons in 7 days already doesn't compute in my head. But how is it even physically possible to be on 7 continents in 7 days?
It was a logistical adventure. Yeah, so as soon as you finish one marathon, you're jumping the jet, flying to the next. So
how did you even have time to recover?
You don't. Yeah, you're just reloading, and you're getting ready to do it again. You wake up, and it's where you've landed in Perth. Get ready to run the Australia Marathon. Go. So.
Wow. Although I will say, I guess that is remarkable preparation for what you're going to do here in the U.S., right? If you can go that many days, that many marathons, for you to go from one side of the country to the other, it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you more than 7 days, I assume.
It will. And in fact, so to break it down, I'm aiming to run 50 miles per day, which is almost 2 marathons per day, for 60 consecutive days. So yeah, it actually will be it's a challenge of a higher magnitude here.
Well, I am rooting you on, and I'm happy to be there. But also, it's a call to action for everyone listening or watching. If you live between New York and Seattle, you're going to have, do you have a website? I know that you do somewhere, right?
We do, yeah. GregRunsFar.com. And I'll be posting the both the route, so you can figure out, hey, it's a 10-mile drive from my hometown to come run a couple miles with this fellow. And then you can even sign up on the site, and then I'll send you little updates about where we'll be, so that you can, when and where to meet us. Because, I would absolutely love to connect with folks. And we're going to be going, starting in New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, into Cleveland, Gary, Chicago, Standing Rock, and then lots of beautiful rural, farmland in between. And so would absolutely love to have folks out joining us.
That's awesome. And as you do this, you're also going to be filming, which I think is I still don't know how you're going to do 50 miles a day, but you're going to be meeting with people and talking to, I mean, you're literally going to be filming every step of the process to bring in all those voices, which is so, so cool. All right, so there's something we haven't touched on that I have heard you talk about, and I would just be remiss if I didn't bring it up. And you have said before, it's about following your smile.
Mhm.
And you gave me just like a little snippet of what that means to you. But as we talk about particularly like youth mental health, tell us what finding your smile, following like what does this mean and why is it something that you like to say when you do talks or you talk about this project?
Yeah, so I'm certainly no brain expert, public health expert. I'm coming at this really from a place as a learner. I'm trying to better understand my own journey, and then try to help others as we do it. One thing I've observed time and again, both in my journey and now with others, the way to kind of sustainable mental health, as far as I've observed, is to do the things that make you happy, do the things that make you feel good, surround yourself with people that you care about, that care about you. That seems to be the sustainable recipe. And I understand there's a lot of complicating factors with that, but at its core, that is really, really helpful. And I really break it into two questions. Number one, what makes you smile? For me, I love to run. So if I'm running, I'm actually a happy guy. Like that makes me just feel good. And then the second question, after you figured out what makes you smile, how can you spend more time doing it? Uh, I've carved up a lot of my life now where I'm able to run literally 365 days a year, because I love it and I want to do more of it. And it's magical because now all these people have come into my life that also like running or are supportive of my running or think I'm a little crazy, but still, cheer me on. And it works really, really well for me. I'm a much happier guy. I don't need to use synthetic chemicals or opiates or alcohol anymore to feel good because I have this thing that makes me feel good. And so that is, I'm asked for, what's your advice for a 15-year-old? And it's follow your smile. Figure out what makes you happy. Experiment widely to find that thing or those things, and then start putting that into your daily routine. Where every day find a way to have those moments out in the woods, or play chess, or read your book, or hang with your kitten, play video games, whatever it is. I think there's it can be really, really beautiful when you devote yourself to things that make you happy.
That's awesome. Well, you answered your own couple of questions in there, which is what makes you smile. You said running makes me smile. And then how do you do more of what makes you smile? Well, you just decided that you're going to literally run across the country and film it. That's amazing. That really is amazing. I like that a lot. I think I've learned that this is really strange, but what makes me smile, like at my core, or sort of that thing I will do even if I never get paid, if I just feel good about it, is I've never figured out exactly what like I can't just say running, but it's something about communicating, which I think is why I enjoy doing like this. Like I know where that pleasure comes from, and so I want to do activities like talking to people because it taps into whatever that is and it feels so good. It really does.
I love that, and you have clearly a gift for it, and that's your path to purpose. It's like I'm gonna make the world better by sharing really interesting stuff that mobilizes folks to do the global good. Like awesome, that's a great mission.
Well, that's perfect. And you just used an ideal word, which is mobilize. So for you, I mean, this is more than a call to action of like there are resources needed. So let's be honest about that. Filming a documentary is complex. It's hard. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time, right? So you are funding this thing. So if anyone is, wanting to donate, tell us where to go, where to follow. But then there's the other real call to action, which is you are literally running and people can join you. They can follow you online. They can run next to you on the street. So give us all the resources. Of course, I will share them in the footnotes and on our, action page on the website, theglobalgoodpodcast.com. But tell us, where can we find you? How do we reach you?
Yes, totally, totally. I appreciate the question. So, we are 100% grassroots funded for this project, and it's funded by folks just like you listening in that have a heart for youth mental health, for addiction recovery. They want to see this project come to life. For $200, you can actually sponsor, you can pay for a mile of the run across America, and you can do it in the name of a loved one impacted by mental illness or addiction, or in honor of someone in recovery. You can make a tax deductible contribution at oneinsevenfilm.com. And then if you want to stay kind of up to date, I mentioned gregrunsfar.com. I'll have lots of info there. And then for kind of real-time updates, you can actually go to Instagram. gregrunsfar is my handle there, and I'll be posting kind of every day. I'll be sharing little things I'm learning as we do it, and then beautiful photos from the wonderful landscapes we'll be running through too.
That's fantastic. And I cannot encourage people to follow enough. And the goal, I realize, between the pandemic and obviously we've got fundraising goals and things like that, but your goal is to leave the Atlantic coast with a foot in the water on what
Yes.
day?
On October 10th, which is coming up. See, October 10th is our goal start. And one of the big challenges is we got to be moving quickly because snow starts hitting both the Great Plains and then the Rockies, the Cascades that we'll need to cross toward the end of this. So it's man versus self and then man versus nature kind of deal. And you can train as well as you can, but Mother Nature has the last word a lot of the time. So.
Yes, she does. So perfect. So the goal is October 10th, which means to anyone listening or watching, it's time to take action. We have only a short amount of time to show our support, and I will make sure that all those resources are listed so you can easily click, follow, donate, run, whatever it is that you feel like best serves the purpose. So thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.
Absolutely my pleasure, Nicole. I so appreciate the invitation and this wonderful conversation.
Of course, I am so happy to meet you and learn all about your journey.
Hey, thank you.
All right, have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye. And thank you, everyone, for joining us again today. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review or comment wherever you're listening or watching. Also, go follow us on social media and get resources for everything that we talked about today with Greg and his run and 1 in 7 films, as well as all the stories that we've talked about in the past. And send your own stories to stories@theglobalgoodpodcast.com. This week's episode was researched and written by me, Nicole Roberts, with audio and video by WillPower Productions. Images and videos were provided by Greg Nance and 1 in 7 Films.